you could very easily make the case, and I'm going to make it right now, that nobody in the Highland Games is doing more for the sport and the athletes than my company, Throwbros. Yes, total brag there, just not even humble brag, total brag. And Fraternity of Girth. Fraternity of Girth is the real deal. Hayden Ballio, pirate captain, has been on the podcast several times. He is somebody that lives and breathes throwing, lifting, strength sports, being girthy. He's talking the talk, he's walking the walk, and he does a lot to support the games. He sponsors. He's helped me put together this pandemic game. This was his idea originally to do this. So if for no other reason that you love for money to be reinvested into the thing that you love, our silly sport of Highland Games, then you should support Fraternity of Girth. The bonus is that you get badass shirts. You get some badass apparel. There's lots coming down the pipe with this company. I want you to be an early adopter. I want you to get on board with Fraternity of Girth. Go to fogapparel.com, pick up some clothes now, use code HEAVYLIGHT. You're not going to be sorry. Another banger coming at you from quarantine. So look, we're in this. Like, there's no dodging it. There's no hoping that it changes. There's no, there's no light at the end of the tunnel at this point. Especially if you get kids, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So we got our quarantine lengthened to, what is it? May 4th, International Star Wars Day. I guess we got it. Extended to, I hope that's why they picked it, by the way. I hope that's why the school districts chose that particular thing. But yeah, we're in it, man. So you got to just embrace it at this point. You really do just have to embrace the idea that, look, you're going to be stuck at home. So you better figure out what to do. What I have been doing in terms of, writing and looking at doing some more video content is I've been looking at the events in the Highland Games. I spent a lot of time in the last episode talking about the stone and, footwork drills, and then how to determine your glide versus rotational orientation, which side of that orientation scale you're on. Maybe you swing both ways. I have swung both ways over my career. Not ashamed to say that. But I kind of want to take a minute to talk about the weights for distance. And since we are all stuck at home, we might as well be practicing, might as well be putting the reps in. And look, in my estimation, and I'm not the only one that thinks this, but I'm the only one sitting here right now with a microphone that gets to say it, that I think the weights for distance is probably the most technical event that we do. The implement's very far from you, but it's also very heavy. The heaviest hammer that we throw is the men's class, 22 pounds. And the lightweight for distance, 28 pounds, is heavier than that. So, they're heavy implements. They're further away from your body. They're unusual in that they're bottom heavy. They're connected with a chain, and then there's a handle. You have to deal with the drag of the chain, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the drills that I use a lot with my heavy light athletes. I use a lot personally. And I'll just kind of run through them, give them a basic rundown. And then the idea is soon that there's going to be video content on my YouTube channel. If you just look for Mike Beach on YouTube, you'll find it. Mike Beach Highland Games. I'll have more to my drill library there. If you're not aware, I do have a drill library on my YouTube channel. It's all put together in a playlist. It has a lot of my favorite drills, a lot of drills that I've learned from other throwers, and some that I might not even use that much, but they're things that I think are awesome and they may help other people. So that's going to be expanded hopefully sometime soon, especially while the weather's good and while I got anything, not a lot else on the horizon besides, homeschooling kids and keeping a household together. And running like 400 side hustles as I do. But yeah, that's kind of the plan right now, is to maybe put some more of that video content in the can. So the things that I'm primarily, the king of weight for distance drills, the king of weight for distance variations, actually, if I'm keeping consistent with my own terminology here, is the one turn throw. Everybody thinks the two turn is like the baseline, what they have to do. I've mentioned this before, that they think that that's the baseline technique. It's just not. You need to master the one turn. So put a lot of one turns into what you're doing. Get, like I've said previously, use the one turn as a gauge. Like, try to set PRs in your one turn all the time. Spencer Tyler, the world record holder in both weights, had basically an entire off season where he did nothing but one turn, and he made kind of a vow to himself, a solemn vow, that he would not go back to the two turn until he was throwing his old two turn PR with the one turn. That's how much power and finish he wanted to develop. So I'm not saying that's for you. That may not be the plan for you to do, because, that's, when your one turn is already world class, that certainly helps. But, it's not the worst approach. Maybe give it a shot, see if it works. But if nothing else, have a healthy amount of one turns in your diet, because they do two things, right? They help you get to the finish with less mess. With less things can go wrong. So you can work on how you go from the sprint position to the finish and how you get to that final turn and finish with less mess and maybe more on balance. The next thing is it sets you up for that sprint phase. You're basically starting a one turn from the exact position you would be sprinting, which is like the second turn. You're taking that first entry turn out of it, and then you're sprinting to the front. So you're learning like, hey, when this weight comes around me, here's the spot where I need to drive. Here's the spot where I need to feel the push of the weight working through. This is where I need to feel that it's time to go, that, I've got good separation with the weight, or that I haven't waited too long and now it's way up my other side. Like if you're a right-handed thrower, it's way up my right side and it's leading me down there now. Or have I gone way too soon, which is really hard to do, by the way, but it can be done. But, or have I gone too soon and all of a sudden I'm off balance and I'm yanking the thing, all those sort of things. The one turn helps you that because it just uncomplicates things. It just breaks things apart. So if you break things apart further with the weight for distance, one of my favorites, and has been for a long time, is the cast and drop. When you're starting to transition to the two-turn throw, plain and simple. And, you're starting your starting position, whatever that is. Most people, that's going to be toes facing the toe board. Some people, if you're more to the, Spencer Tyler, and my way of thinking is, you turn off to your throwing side, whatever your implement side is, you turn and rotate that way so you can keep from kind of over rotating out of the box. Not a lot of people have a problem over rotating. That's not what most of us have a problem with. Most of us have a problem with balance, plain and simple. Most people's problems in most throws, especially the way for distance, is being on balance. So don't think you need to turn, towards your throwing side, towards your, right-hand side for a right-hand thrower, and, be facing that way just because you saw Spencer do it, or you saw like another great thrower. Like just because you see them doesn't mean that it's going to translate to you. That's maybe not the song you should cover, so to speak. But look for the fundamental things in those throws that are always there. But anyway, the cast and drop is get in that first position and then learn to cast that thing around you. Learn in the cast and drop that you need to not just let it swing behind you. And the biggest thing that I see is that people let it swing like they swing in front, they swing it behind, and then they don't dip and sit back against it in any way, and they don't work the weight around them. So the weight just drops down behind their heel. And now this weight's like directly underneath them, and they've got to jump up to try to make it work. And when you do that, the weight is going off, and for a right-handed thrower, it's going off to your right. So you are going to feel that, and you're going to yank in left. And then your first turn, you're going to cover so much ground, you're going to jump all the way to the middle of the box. And a lot of times you're going to jump way forward too, trying to compensate for all that. So you've cut your sprint like in half, the amount you can sprint. So the cast and drop should teach you to, when the weight goes behind you, as you start to, the initial swings when you get it going, when it goes behind you, as it hits behind you, like if you're a clock and 12 o'clock is towards the field and 6 o'clock is behind you. Once the weight is coming back to 6 o'clock to even with you, you need to dip and sit. You need to soften your knees and hips and dip down with it. It's going to come back up again. You need to rise with it as it comes behind you. As you do that, turn your chest towards the back, to let your torso rotate. Let that weight move so it gets a nice long orbit. I use this cue a lot of times, elevate the throwing hand. That works for some people, but a lot of people just think about pushing it around you, like you're trying to knock things off a low shelf, or you're trying to reach out and touch the furthest blade of grass from you. As you do that, though, you have to sit against it again because it swung to this high point, and as you start thinking about pushing it around, it's going to come back down. You have to sink against it again. That's a really common mistake that I see, that people don't sit against it and work it around them at that point. Now, speaking of Mr. Tyler, watch him. Watch how hard, even in a lightweight for distance throw, how hard he sits against that thing and works it around him. The reason for that is, if you think about this, if you can try to visualize, your center of gravity normally sits right in the middle of your body when you're standing on 2 feet, right? It's just below your navel or whatever. That's where your center of gravity is, but it's in the middle of you. If you're drawing a line from the ground up to your head, that's where it sits. Well, when you put a 14, 28, 56 pound, 42 pound weight in your hand and swing it around you, if you're right-handed, then your center of gravity as that thing is swinging is shifted over because you're having to compensate for that weight and whatever it weighs with its weight plus acceleration out there, like, depending on how long the moment arm is and all that kind of good physics shit. So you're going to shift. So instead of fighting against that and yanking it back in, I encourage everybody in this cast and drop or in any kind of cast to get way out on their right leg as a right-handed thrower. Left leg is a left-handed thrower. But load up way out on your right leg, like you're loading up for a standing stone throw. Get as much of your weight on that right leg as you can so you can push that weight way out around you on your throwing side, on your implement hand side. Get it out and around you so when you actually make that turn, you're going to have to pull it in left. There's the physics of the situation is that you're going to have to come back in left. And this thing's attached to you and rotating around you. It's coming back to the left, right? So when we do that, if we can get it as our center of gravity shifted over, when we turn and shift that gravity in towards the middle, towards our left side when we're a right-handed thrower, then we won't travel so far. We won't yank it in and jump into the middle. The ideal cast is that we're moving the weight in and we do that first rotation and we land right where we started in that back corner of the box. That's the ideal because now you have the entire 9 feet or more if you take the hypotenuse of the, from the back corner to the opposite front corner. You have all that room to sprint and all that room to create velocity and all that room to work that thing and drive to the front and create speed on it. So that's why I pull, like the cast and drop, all it does is take that cast and instead of continuing, you cast, land, and you basically drop the weight as you're continuing to work it around you. You try to drop it right behind you so you can see what kind of position you land in when you get ready to sprint. That's it. You're just landing in the sprint position and letting it go. In general, if you're naturally doing it right and you're working the weight around you, it's going to hit and it's going to roll away from you towards your right-handed side as a right-handed thrower, left-handed side as a left-handed thrower. It's going to hit and roll a little bit. It's not just going to drop dead to the ground. That's okay. That means you're working it around and kind of pushing it through. So the cast and drop is a big one. Another one that I took from my good buddy Aaron George is he called it a cast and rotate. I call it a cast and throw. Is doing that same thing, but then landing and just throwing it from that cast. Landing tight in that same spot from the cast and then letting it go, throwing it towards the trick. It's not going to be a good throw. It doesn't matter about the distance of it. What it's teaching you is when you hit that point now, instead of just developing the habit of like, oh, drop it and check your position, because that'll make you hesitate a lot of times. And that's how the weight ends up running around you and it takes charge and you kind of water ski behind it as you're going to the front. Instead, this teaches you, hey, when you hit the ground, you got work to do. When you hit the ground from that cast, you have work to do. You got to move this direction. So the other thing that it helps me especially and a lot of other throwers with is head spotting. Is when you start turning and you're thinking about all these positions, you may watch your feet or you may watch the weight. I'm a weight watcher. Like I watch the implement so much when it gets behind me. So unless I having a steady diet of these cast and rotate, cast and throw, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to call it the cast and throw. Sorry, Aaron, I'm taking it for mine now. I got a podcast. You don't. Sorry, man. But working in a steady diet of that will teach you when you land, you're going this way. You get your head to where you're going because you got to throw that direction. I was a baseball athlete. I was a throwing athlete, not a track and field throwing athlete, but an overhand throwing athlete. So I was always taught to like have my head where I'm throwing, like that's where the target is. I'm trying to, any natural feeling throw is going to have that. So teaching yourself that when you land at that position, you have more throwing to do will be a big mental, can give you a big mental breakthrough, honestly. So those three in particular, they bring me a great deal of joy to program because I can see people improve quickly with them. I can see them start to change like their habits out of the back. The cast and drop, the cast and rotate especially, you can see those things. There's also the line drill is very popular. I like the line drill for very early in a thrower's career or very deep in the off season, just because it teaches balance. But if you're doing a line drill you like can't keep in a straight line, and you like drift way off to the left because you keep yanking, or you're spotting the weight every time and you're like getting not balanced, then the line drill doesn't help if you don't have those other fundamentals in place. So, I do a line drill. I'll do a 3-turn throw for a lot of times as kind of a balance check for people. You take the trig away and everything. You just do a 3-turn and throw and see if you can maintain if what you're doing is sustainable. If 3 turns is kind of the point at which you can see like, okay, shit's falling apart. Like, so that's another great tool. But if you can use the cast and drop, the cast and throw, and these 1-turns to develop balance and kind of a linear push to your sprint, balance in the cast and a linear push to the sprint, then I think you're going to be able to get more out of things like the line drill. The line drill, I think, is more of like a reestablish your connection with the weight kind of thing. Now, one interesting thing, and the Pekoskis talk about this also, and John Oden also talks about this. Shout out to John for kind of making a good video on this. The long chain drills with the weight for distance. I think those are very useful. I don't do them enough, but they're very, very good for maintaining a connection to the weight and making sure that you're not yanking it. Because if you yank a long chain weight, like, if you like double the length of the chain on a weight, and just do it with a lightweight, don't worry about it on a heavyweight. That's just silliness. But if you try to yank it and you don't work it through the path, then you're going to lose it completely. All your mistakes are going to get magnified by that long chain. So the line drill or the 3-turn throw with a longer chain is actually a really, really good tool for developing that connection with it. But again, get your balance first. Before you start worrying about all those things like connection and separation, being connected to the implement, get your balance first. Make sure that you can turn and remain balanced and get your head out of your feet and not be watching the weight so much. That's the big challenge for a lot of people that's going to unlock their ability to throw more. Before I get to the last one, but the last drill that I like to use for the weight for distance, I do want to talk about sport kilt. I love talking about sport kilt because sport kilt has always treated me well. Sport kilt, whenever I've had, customer service stuff where I'm like, I lost my kilt and I got to get one before, they always rush and do what they need to get me set up, to represent them and to look good on the field. So Sport Kilt is a world-class company in terms of the way that they treat customers. There's no other way to say it. I know this is a small niche that we're in, and it almost seems like we don't deserve that. But Sport Kilt has always treated me incredibly well. They've always been very receptive, to any needs that I may have, anything like that. And they have awesome kilts. Like they make the best stuff. They make the best stuff for athletes out there, and you can get completely geared up at sportkilt.com. So use code HEAVYLIGHT, all one word, at Sportkilt. You're going to save 10%. Now, my final drill, and this is one that will stir some controversy, but I was actually happy to see Zach Riley post some short chain drills recently, kind of the opposite of the long chain drills. Now, you can just do throws with a short chain, and I'm totally cool with that. I think that's good. One thing that I like, well, let me talk, and Zach had a fantastic, go to his Instagram, Zachary Riley, go to his Instagram and kind of look at his recent explanation of why he does it. I think it's fantastic because it causes him, without having to change the weight of the implement, because we know, like it's in the fucking title of my book, that I love overweight and underweight implements in sparing use. I like to use those at certain points of the season as available. And I've got a whole chart about like what I recommended weights are and everything in the book. What he talks about is that you can use, a dirty little secret is you can use the short chain to kind of get the same effect that you get from an underweight weight for distance. Because again, read his Instagram because it's a fantastic explanation. But in general, because you're losing length, you're losing moment arm, right? You're losing length from, your center of gravity to where the weight is. You're losing length when you take the chain away. In order to add more to that velocity equation, you have to create more velocity with your body, is the simplest way to say it, because you can't count on the chain to transfer. You can't count on that distance. So it's a good way to work speed sometimes. The other reason that I like it, similarly, is that it teaches people to finish aggressively. I remember working with Spencer on, it was actually the day that we filmed his little throwing thing on 1-turns. And he actually uses a window weight, which is like an old school like thing. It's like a counterweight for a window that rolls up on a pulley system. And they're like, they're basically just like there's like a big sausage weight basically. But he would use that to do fronts with, to throw from the front, to do standing throws, and just kind of get his finish dialed in with that. They're very light. It was like, I don't know, 8-9 pounds, something like that. I can't remember what. But they're very light, and you can just kind of toss them easy. It's just like, it's not high effort throwing, but you can feel it. It's enough to feel it instead of doing it empty-handed or with like a Nerf football or something. Like it's got some heft to it, so you can feel it. And I took that and kind of translated that to, well, I can take the 28, I can pop the chain out of that, and I feel like I can get great finishes by working on my, not great, because I don't have a great finish, but I feel like one day I could work towards a great finish by using the short chain and working on my fronts, working on standing throws. Just line up just how you would finish in a good power position and set up like you would for a one turn, swinging front, swinging back, and then bring that thing out and around you and try to finish with some speed and aggression out towards the throwing area. That's a good way to feel what it's supposed to feel like. So if you have like an underweight available to you, that's even better because you can pull the chain out and then do underweight with that. I think that's fantastic. If you have a window weight like Spencer had, great. If you got like a Nerf boomerang, try one of those, I guess. Stick some, tape some lead shot to it and throw a Nerf boomerang. Just, duck when it comes back. It's a boomerang. But yeah, that's kind of the last in my core group. There are some other weird things that I'll do with throwers once in a while, but they're kind of very specific things to work on specific problems that I won't do for mass consumption because they're so specific. I don't want somebody like trying little weird things like I do with throwers that have a very unique problem, or not even a unique problem, just a unique need on how I know that their mind works and their body works to solve something. Because, that's only going to apply to a few people, and I don't want everybody trying all the weird stuff. But those are kind of the big hitters for me. Those are the high percentage stuff. But I'd be interested to know, if you want to respond on Instagram, or if you got tag me in something, if you got a cool way for distance drill, I would love to see that stuff out there. Because look, I'm not ashamed of it. I'll steal your shit, man. I'll use it if it works. I'll use that in coaching. I don't have it all figured out. I mean, just because I coach doesn't mean that I'm the be-all, end-all authority on it. So if the shit works, I'm going to steal it from you. So make sure to tag me in it because I'll completely steal it and never credit you with it. Heavy Light is brought to you by Throw Bros. Throw Bros is the only online store for Highland Games athletes. Gear up, get throwing. Use code HEAVYLIGHT, all one word. You're going to save 10% at throwbros.com.